Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the West Virginia Hospitality and Travel Association's Hospitality Highlights. Today I'm joined by WVHTA Executive Director Richie Heath, Deno Stanley from Adelphia Sports Bar and Grille in Charleston, and Annette Gavin Bates, who is CEO of the Jefferson County CVB. How are you guys today?
Hey there.
Great.
Good, doing good.
Great.
Last month in March, the West Virginia legislature wrapped up their legislative session for this year. And as always, the WVHTA was there working for and advocating for our members. And that's one of the big benefits our members receive is advocacy at the Capitol and here in Charleston. And so I wanted to kick it over to our Richie and kind of recap some of the bills that were priorities for the association and bills of interest for our members that happened in 2022.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jordan. It was another, as always, it was another eventful legislative session, we think, on the tourism front. One thing we've seen over the last several years is that our state policymakers, of course, with the governor, the legislature, others really have understood the importance of tourism and the industry. So that's really been a big help over the last several years. Last year we had a number of our key initiatives that crossed the finish line. So this year was a little bit of an interesting one at the session. We were playing offense, but really looking to pick our spots where we could be helpful and supportive of measures that would advance the industry. We didn't have too much in terms of big, heavy fixes that we needed to get through. So, probably our main thing was being involved in House Bill 4848, which was promulgated by the ABCA and the governor's office to do some cleanup on House Bill 2025, the omnibus alcohol reform legislation from the year prior. So we were involved throughout the process with those discussions and making sure that concerns of our members could be addressed. So we were happy to see that get across the finish line. One of the main things we wanted to be focused on at the very least this year was making sure that funding for the tourism department stayed at the levels it's been at. And as in years past, the marketing budget was funded at $14 million. We were very happy to see that. Actually had a couple of pieces of legislation that the tourism department pushed on their own this year that we were supportive of and tried to share the industry support on. There was House Bill 4502, which was the governor's proposed Build WV Act, which completed legislative action. That one is looking at providing some incentives to building housing and alleviating some of the concerns we've been hearing in our growing areas about workforce housing issues. So we'll be excited to see that go into effect. And then you also had House Bill 4408, which will allow our state parks to enter into contracts with third-party entities for certain recreational opportunities. And I think the general consensus was that legislation will be extremely helpful as our state parks continue to grow, renovate, and improve the amenities that they're providing. And so this is just another tool that we have to try to attract folks to West Virginia and our wonderful parks. And then, something that probably doesn't get as much attention, but that we're always involved in on behalf of the association is the rulemaking process. Obviously a year-long process that culminates during the legislative session. And so with the help of Deno and others, we were we worked closely behind the scenes on the Department of Revenue rule that had the legislative rules implementing House Bill 2025, making sure that the technical regulations in those rules didn't undermine the overall purpose of that legislation, and other rules like the food manufacturing processing rule, things like that, where we're always keeping an eye out to see if there are any regulations out there that might hamper our members. And then, other than those were sort of the main things that we were involved in. And then also, just trying to make sure that we didn't have any harmful measures to the industry during the course of the session. So always playing defense just in case. And on the whole, we thought it was another successful session.
Yeah, thanks for the recap. It is exciting to see the legislature and the governor, bring tourism and the hospitality industry to the forefront of the state, and by passing some of these important reforms and measures to boost and put the industry forward here in West Virginia. Deno, Richie mentioned House Bill 4848, which was an alcohol reform bill this year. Last year, we had House Bill 2025, which updated many of the state's antiquated laws and licensing procedures, and also allowed new methods for business such as alcohol delivery, outdoor street dining, and some other things that were implemented during the pandemic. The HTA and you personally have been very involved and important in these discussions and moving these bills forward. This year, last year, the brunch bill a few years ago. How have these laws and pieces of legislation helped you and other restaurants in West Virginia?
Thank you, Jordan, and thank you, Richie. And the HTA was instrumental in working on our alcohol legislation. And this is something we've been working on for about 3 or 4 years now. In 2025, last year, was really the culmination of a couple years worth of work, along with the HTA and our senators and delegates, to bring our antiquated alcohol laws, into the millennium. They were really created back in the 20s and 30s with prohibition, and what they were essentially, they were just blue laws that really had no place in today's society and where we're headed to with tourism. These laws were created so long ago that they really hamstrung our state and made us uncompetitive with not just surrounding states, but the rest of the country, because other states had already loosened up their restrictions and allowed, alcohol consumption in a smart and intelligent way to move forward. In West Virginia, we were left in the dust with it. So it's been quite a journey for the past few years. Last year, with the passing of 2025, just really brought us in to the forefront and has made us so competitive with other states now, that other states that were already doing a lot of things that we weren't allowed to do. So that inhibited tourism in our area, to where people would go, to other states, surrounding states that were close by. They could do things there. Then they would come into West Virginia and we would say, sorry, our legislation, our laws don't allow this. So what that did was, next year, Mr. and Mrs. Smith and their children did not come back to West Virginia because they couldn't do things that they could do in other states. So now we've with 2025 last year was a huge overhaul, made us extremely competitive with every other state in the country. And then this year with 4848, we kind of tightened up some of that legislation and cleaned up some few things that were forgotten. It was a big bill, 2025. I mean, it was 130 some pages. So there was a lot there. Some things were going to be missed. Most of it just small language changes that needed. But along with the HTA, Richie, our senators, our delegates, too many to name, they were all on board with it. Really has helped all our restaurants, our fairs and festivals. And I don't want to forget that we did work hand in glove with all our restaurateurs. As a food and service division president for the HTA, I reached out to all our restaurateurs, our distilleries, our fair and festivals. Everybody was on board with it. We had immense support when the House and the Senate. And the HTA was really instrumental in being a tool to help us move that forward, get us competitive with tourism, get these tourism dollars coming into our state. We know that for every dollar we spend on tourism, we get $8 back. That's the number, that's the formula, and that's a realistic number. So we're so excited that we're now competitive. We can get these things and people traveling into our state see the wonderful things we have, eating in our restaurants, staying in our hotels, and just bringing those kind of funds into our wonderful state that is going to just prohibit growth, not prohibit, that will allow us to grow into the future the way we need to be and be competitive with the rest of the country.
Yeah, thanks, Deno, and thanks for your hard work on that. It's always exciting, whether it's in Charleston or we travel the state to see some of these concepts taken advantage of, whether it's outdoor dining, people enjoying the weather, distancing, whether it's people, going to restaurants early on the weekends for brunch and other things. It's excited to see this legislation come to fruition for our restaurants and eateries.
Yeah, Jordan, I'll just say real quick to echo Deno's point, you talk about being competitive nationally and compared to other states, and I think people underestimate just how big of a lift that getting House Bill 2025 across, as you mentioned, was a 136-page bill, lots of concepts in there. And what we see after that is a lot of other states trying to mimic some of those things, especially with regard to alcohol delivery and things like that. And we've got states that we see in talking with our counterparts and associations in other states that have had trouble getting things like that passed, and are still trying to get some of these new concepts that we got into law relatively quickly across the finish line. So, in many aspects, we've sort of jumped to the front of the line on some of these.
That's well put, Richie. We really did. You have to go to some states like Florida that have really lifted restrictions to find some of the things that we have in our new bill in 2025, or last year's bill, especially regarding like delivery services and things like that. And it's not to be excess with alcohol. Here's a great for instance. Now you can order in our state, if you order to-go food from a restaurant, you are able to order a legal beverage with it. And it only makes sense. We have a lot of people that are travelers in our state that are staying in hotels that want to have a legal beverage with their meal before they couldn't, or they had to leave and go out and get it. Now it can be delivered with third-party delivery services or the restaurant itself. So that's cutting edge stuff. I'm not sure that any surrounding states have that legislation, but they are looking at our legislation to copycat the things we've done. So we really are cutting edge and have moved ahead of the game in this legislation.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And, pivoting away from restaurants maybe for a second, Annette, as a leader of the CVB and boots in the ground in your community, what other types and pieces of legislation has the HTA and others been involved in and advocated for that have helped your area and the tourism industry as a whole in West Virginia?
Wow, well, thank you, Jordan, Richie, and Deno. And I echo everything you said, talking about legislation with alcohol reform, which was huge for our partners. And the CVBs worked really closely on that too, because it affected our partners. Last year specifically, we saw outdoor dining becoming an issue more and more with COVID. And there were so many things that we learned that we just took the knowledge we had from how we had to adjust and implemented some of that in the language that you guys all worked on that alcohol reform. So it was some big stuff for our partners, but some other things, the biggest thing that we had passed that went into effect this year would be the Airbnb bill. And WVHTA took the lead on that, to have someone who's working like Richie for our partners and the CVB, for all the recipients that were able to get the collection from this bill. It's interesting to have a lobbyist who's also an attorney who could actually work on that language, because as you guys kept talking about, other states are looking at us on how we did alcohol reform. Let's go back to the fact that Airbnb and the issues with short-term rentals is a national problem. And we addressed it a little differently. I think kudos to HTA and the CVB Association to say, look, we're not against short-term rentals. We just want them to be on the level playing field, the same playing field as all of our other hoteliers. It said not only is it a funding issue, because it really is, but it's also a fairness issue. And because we addressed it that way, I think with our legislators, I think that made the difference, that we said, look, we welcome short-term rentals in our community. Across the state, CVB said, yeah, they're there. And we all saw through COVID, it became bigger and bigger, right? So that bill, that Airbnb bill, actually last year, as we all know, we worked on that bill, we got it passed, but there was a technical issue. So we had to come back, or the year before, we had to come back last year and fix that technicality, which Richie worked on, and HTA took the lead on that. And what it did was actually create a better bill, because now, if you understand the short-term rental community a little bit, if you book on the platform with the marketplace facilitator like Airbnb, you are paying the hotel motel tax right there at point of sale. They charge it, they collect it, and they remit it. And now with the new bill that went into effect this year, the remittance goes back to localities. So the fact that it's going directly back to your county or municipality is huge. There's no middle person. And let's just say, as far as the other states around us, there's one state that I know of that has that same mechanism in place with Pennsylvania. And a lot of other states are trying to get the bill that we got passed.
Yep.
So let me tell you how big that is for us. I mean, for HTA to do the work they did, and for the CVBs to support and just educate on what was happening. For Jefferson County alone, who was ranked #2 in the state for the highest number of short-term rentals, for the first quarter this year, I'm up 80% versus last year, 80%. And our legislators are dumbfounded about the fact that this bill made that much of an impact in a county like Jefferson County. We have the highest visitor spend, and we knew that, you know, we had a number of Airbnbs, but a lot of our CVBs now have gone out and said, what else can we get to understand this report, understand the impact? And we're seeing, just from the time we started working on the bill till today, I can say we went from 65 Airbnb short-term rentals in Jefferson County 3 years ago, and we're at right now 301. And I think it's just growing. And so the reality is HTA said, let's go in, let's work on this bill. Let's make it not just beneficial, again, funding wise for CVBs. This affects Parks and Rec, arts, historic landmarks. There's a number of recipients. And it was a great partnership because we had the Association of Counties, the Municipal League, everyone working with us on the bill because we all knew the impact of it. So that's just one bill. You guys were instrumental in working with us on CVB oversight bill that we got passed. And we literally sat down with leadership. Richie did an amazing job along with our lobbyists. We worked together to come up with best practices, what could be in that bill, the best language for best practices for CVBs. It put a moratorium on them. It said that if you were a CVB, you had to be transparent. You had to turn in your financials to the joint committee, to the state auditor and the CVB Association. And what that kind of did, just for you guys to know today, is that first group that had to report 90 days following their fiscal year, in our case was a calendar year, so they had to report the end of March. We actually, out of our membership, the CVB membership, had all 15 report and submit their financials, which was fantastic. And it's interesting, as of yesterday, the auditor's office reported that they didn't receive one other CVB information. So I think what it does is exactly what we kept talking about with our leadership, is that it takes not only the associations, both of them, HTA and CVB working together, gives them the integrity to show that we are transparent, that we are doing the right things, that we do have best practices. But it also probably raises the question, if you cannot report, if you didn't submit, or if you didn't even know about it, it probably raises the question of what kind of nonprofit you're running at this point. And it wasn't a gotcha, and it's not one of those type of things, but it absolutely is about doing the right thing, setting the best practices, and working with your community. So HTA, and again, I can't say enough about the resources. It was instrumental in helping CVBs across the state, because as you said, we're boots on the ground. We work with a lot of partners, over 4,000 different partners in the state that we work with. And alcohol reform, the short-term rental, like I said, fairness and funding versus what was happening before, all of these things really matter to the success. And all of us, of course, were supporting Secretary Ruby getting more funding, making sure that that funding was there, the dedicated funding was there for her, because every time we invest in tourism, we invest in our communities in the state. And so marketing all of this, the state and all of our destinations, just giving more and more dollars to it, it's a lot of money. We have never had a governor who did as much for tourism as this current governor has. He really, he doesn't just say it, he does it. And we can't thank him enough for everything he's done to help tourism.
Yeah, thanks, Annette. That's true. And, you know, one of the things that you hit on are kind of two key words that are sticking with me are partnerships and, you know, working together. And, you know, we're really happy to have the partnerships that we do and work together with all the members of CVBs and the WVHTA members. And, you know, as the association grows and as tourism and hospitality grows in West Virginia, so does the association's voice in the state and at the Capitol. And so it's clear that, you know, advocacy is a huge benefit of being a WVHTA member. I just wanted to throw this out to Annette and Deno and see, you know, what are other benefits and reasons that you think a restaurant, a hotel, a travel attraction, or a CVB should be members of the association?
You want to start, Annette? Or?
Sure, I'll start. I think some of it's obvious based on what Deno and I said. If you want a voice at the Capitol, but if you not only want a voice at the Capitol, but in the state, then you want to surround yourself with the people that are doing the same things that you're doing, and you work through the issues. You set really big goals and initiatives. And I'll be honest, I think as one person who's been at the Capitol now for 9 years and worked with you guys down there and many others, I think HTA and the CVB Association has a real voice down there that we've never had before. I hear from the leadership all the time how important it is. We don't ask them for a lot of frivolous stuff. We get out there and we set real achievable goals, sometimes incredible goals that, like Deno said, it's taken us 100 years to get there, but we've really set goals and worked together. I tell you, for the CVBs, the biggest thing to join HTA is absolutely surrounding yourself with your partners, surrounding yourself with voices from the community and the resources. It's an incredible amount of resources when you join HTA. You not only get Richie as a lobbyist and an attorney, you get a bench, a whole team with Jordan and everybody there with HTA that, you know, you just never feel alone. It was the best feeling through COVID, I'll tell you, to be surrounded by our members with HTA, because we knew we weren't alone. And you all are invested in each and every business. You make it a point to go around the state and visit them. You make it a point to answer all the calls that the CVBs give you, that, and even ones that aren't members, you've been great with, and we appreciate that. So I can't say enough about it. It's a small amount of money to have a voice and to be heard. It's a small amount of money. I can't say enough the benefits of HTA.
You're going to toss that over to me?
I am.
Well, I can only echo your sentiments. I mean, I come from the restaurant side. So I hear a lot of the things that restaurateurs talk about, distilleries, alcohol played a big part in that in our legislation. But, you hit the nail on the head there. When down at the Capitol, during the legislative rulemaking process, the West Virginia Hospitality and Travel Association is well respected there. And that was something I found out early on. I think I've been a board member now for about 5 or 6 years. And when I first came in down there, I don't want to say I was surprised, but we carry some weight there. And the senators and delegates respect where we are and what we're working on, because we have so many tentacles in the community and throughout the state, and so many members. And what originally got me into the WVHTA was we were working on the brunch bill 5 or 6 years ago.
Yep.
And I had a restaurant out on Capitol Street. I could not serve a mimosa on a Sunday morning with brunch. We weren't really getting anywhere at a local level. So my next step was at a state level, which is where the HTA came in and really helped us turn that around, brought tourism in on Sundays, and we've moved it in from there. So if you have to be a member of this association is such a huge power move as a business person. And we've got, like you said, Richie is not only a great lobbyist, but an attorney and knows his information and knows how to navigate at the Capitol and get things done. I'm sorry about that. Knows how to get things done there. It really helps us move our state forward. So as a local business person or a statewide business person, you cannot do any better than to be with this association if you're trying to move our state forward and move your business forward and bring people in and show them how wonderful we are. I just can't say enough about it. Thank you.
No, thank you.
I was going to say, we certainly appreciate that. If I could put in one plug for you all and our members as a whole, I think the other benefit for folks is the collective voices you all mentioned, and our membership really activates around issues. And so I think that's a big reason for the sway that you all talk about, the ability to influence folks at the legislature. That's because members like you all on a drop of a hat will reach out to their delegates, their senators, let them know of an issue that is of importance to the industry. And so that collective group voice is always helpful. And the more people that join that voice, the more influential it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the WVHTA Hospitality Highlights. And if you're interested in learning more about the association, feel free to give us a call, 304-347-2100, or you can always visit us online at wvhta.com. Thank you.
So long.
Thank you.